Hello, what I'm going to be doing in this next video is show you how you can use Python and the Sqlite 3 module to go ahead, create a database, insert rows into that database, update rows in the database, delete rows from the database, and query the database. So what I've done is I've broken this program down into several sections, and so this will allow us to go ahead and use the DB SQLite tool to go in and see what happens within the database after each one of these steps. So this first Python program I have is the create program. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a database to hold music albums. When you're using the SQLite module, you need to import it all the time. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and import it. And then what we're going to do is we need to create a connection to the database. And basically what this does is it enables us to connect to an existing database using the connection object CONN or con. If the database does not exist, then it will be created and a database object will be returned back to us. So if it does not exist, it will be created for you. If it already exists, then you'll just connect to that database. The next thing we need to do is we need to get a cursor object. So a cursor is like a file handle that we can use to perform operations on the data stored in the database. Calling the cursor is very similar conceptually to calling open when you're dealing with text files. Once we have the cursor, we can begin to execute commands on the contents of the database using the execute method. So again, the next thing we need to do is we need to get that cursor object so we can go ahead and execute our SQL commands. So this next command, what we're going to do is we're going to call the execute method on our cursor object. And what we're going to pass in is the SQL that we want to run. So what we're going to do here is if an albums table currently exists in the database, we're going to go ahead and drop that table and start from fresh. So that's the first step we're going to do. What that does is it removes the album table from the database if it exists. This pattern is simply to allow us to run the same program to create the albums table over and over again without causing an error. So in the next statement, what we're going to do is we're going to create the albums table. So in order to create the table, we need to use the create table SQL command. And then after that, we need to specify the table name. And then what we're doing in parentheses, we're specifying each one of the fields or column names. So our first column is title, and it is of type text. Our second column is artist, and it is of type text. Our third column is release date. It is of type text. Our fourth column is publisher. Again, it is of type text. And our fifth column is media type, and it is of type text. So basically, that's the SQL command that we're going to run to go ahead and create our table called albums. It'll have 5 fields or columns, all of which hold text in them. So after we create that, we're going to go ahead and print this statement. And then after the print statement, what we need to do is we need to commit the changes to the database. So whenever you run a command that actually operates and changes the structure of a database or a table, you want to run the commit command on your connection object. And then you always want to, when you're going to go ahead and in the program, you won't be working with the cursor anymore. You want to go ahead and close that cursor object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and run this module. And it comes back, the database and table have been created successfully. If you can see, I ran this module under my directory CIS 156 databases / create py. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go out to that location using File Explorer. So let me go into my C directory, click on CIS 156, click on databases, and what you have here is the My Database that was created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So I'll just go ahead and double click on it. So what I'm using is I'm using the DB browser for Sqlite that I downloaded and installed. So if you go ahead and look in my database, what we have is we have one table and we have the various column names, title, artist, release date, publisher, and media type. And we have the data type for each one of those columns or fields in our database. So this is a great tool that if you want to see what's going on when your database is created, when you insert records, update records, delete records, that you can go in and actually look at the data that's currently in your database. So let me just go ahead and minimize this for now. So again, you'll find that database created in the directory where you actually ran, where I ran my create.py file. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and insert some data into our database. So let me go ahead and open up my insert program. So again, we need to go ahead and import our Sqlite 3 module, and then we create our connection to the database and get our cursor object. Again, we need that cursor object so that we can execute and operate on our table in our database. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the cursor.x, we're going to use the insert into command to insert a record into our database. So the one thing you want to note is that each item had to have single quotes around it. This can get complicated when you need to insert things that include single quotes in them. So what we've done here is we've inserted into albums. We're passing in our values. So the first value is the name of the artist. No, it's the name of the title of the album. The second value is the artist. The third value was the release date of the album. The fourth value is the publisher of the album. And the fifth value is the media type. So what this command will do is it'll go ahead and insert Back in Black by AC/DC into our album table. So the next piece of code allows you to insert multiple records using the more secure question method. So you can add multiple records at once by using the cursor's execute mini method. So that's what we're doing down below. So what we're doing here is we're using a question marks instead of string substitution to enter the values down below. So what we have here is we have 5 question marks. Each question mark is related to one of the fields of the record or row that we want to insert into the database. Using string substitution is not safe and should not be used as it can allow SQL injection attacks to occur. The question mark method is much more safe, and so what we're doing here is we've gone ahead and we've actually created an array, and for within that array we have one row for each one of our uh, or we have one entry in parentheses separated by comma for each row that we're going to be inputting into the database. So what we're going to be inputting, we're going to input 4 more albums. The first one is Nevermind by Nirvana. The second one is And a Justice for All by Metallica. The third one is the Black Album by Metallica. And the fourth one is In Your Honor by the Foo Fighters. So again, we can go ahead, we can define each one of our rows separated by square brackets, and then each row will have, since it's all text data, it needs to all be within single quotes. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and execute mini. So we're going to insert into album values, and we're inserting 5 fields. So we have 5 question marks separated by commas. And then we pass in the array of information that we're going to be inserting into our albums table. So after the inserts have been completed, we'll print out the data was inserted successfully. We'll commit the changes again. If you want that information to be saved to your database, you must call the commit command. And then we'll go ahead and close our connection. So let me just go ahead and run this command. So the data was inserted successfully. In order to see, to visualize it, we can just go into our link again, click on Browse Data, and then now what we have is we have the albums that have been added. We have back the various titles of the albums, the artist, the release date, the publisher, and the media type. So the other thing that you can actually do with this DB browser for SQLite, you can actually go in and use it to insert data in the table or update your table, delete records, etc., etc. But we're going to be using Python for all of our work with our My Database albums table. So this is the end of video number 1. So in video number 2, what we're going to be going through is how to update and delete rows in the database. And then after that, we're going to basically run through some queries to access the information in the database using Python. So we will talk to you later.